everyone's screaming at you the whole time. You're so selfish. You're so selfish. You don't care about anything except yourself, yourself, yourself. And the second you raise your hand, Brent, to get help, everyone goes like this. Listen, man, you gotta take care of yourself. You gotta be selfish. You gotta work on yourself because you're so focused on your addiction just completely clouds your mind and makes you into a person that you're not, that it looks like you're being selfish, but the disease, that addiction's eating you. And then when you have a chance to address it and take time out, and I went right back into my prison mode. I went into that mentality, get into a routine, get into the rehab. I was out I checked in Thursday afternoon at 4 o'clock. At 5:30 Friday morning, I was outside. I didn't have a gym, which they lied about. I was on the website. They had a gym and they had horses and a pool. I got there. I go, where's the gym? They go, we closed it down. I said, where are the horses? They go, we had to bury it in the pool. And I'm like, where's the beach? It's 20 miles away. I'm like, this is bullshit. But I locked down, started working out every day. And I got serious about it. I got serious just like I did about going to prison and being in prison.
What happens when your worst fear becomes your reality? Hi, I'm Brent Cassity. Welcome to the Nightmare Success In and Out podcast, where we explore how to overcome your fears and nightmares and set yourself free. We're going to be exploring this topic with guys I was in Leavenworth with and others who survived their own nightmare. These stories can be inspiring, sometimes sad. There's some humor, but hopefully you can come away with a nugget of something that'll help you knock down some of the prisons you built up in your own mind. All right, welcome back. Nightmare Success In and Out listeners, this is where you come for what happens when your worst fear becomes your reality. How do you adapt, survive, overcome, set yourself free? And folks, don't forget to follow, subscribe, share this thing out, like it up, comment. It helps the show, and I really appreciate that. So who are we talking to today? Well, we've got PJ Jensen in the house. I was just telling him I was on his show. This is last week or the week before. I always like interviewing people after they've interviewed me. It's kind of fun. So a little bit about PJ. You know, what happens when control slips and your life starts to unravel? For PJ Jensen, it wasn't just one moment. It was a series of choices fueled by addiction that led him to federal prison sentence. But prison didn't break him. It forced a decision: stay the same or rebuild everything. Today, PJ is the voice behind the LFG Life Podcast, built on discipline, accountability, and the belief that no matter how far you fall, you can fight your way back. So the question is, what does it really take to turn your lowest point to your comeback? I can't wait to jump into all this. Before we do, I want to recognize our show sponsor, Auto Plaza Direct. You know, who likes spending a couple of weekends walking car lots looking for a car, and then you spend 4 or 5 hours in the dealership to buy a car? It's kind of like a root canal appointment. Well, there's a better way to take away all that pain and the hassle of getting a car. It's called Auto Plaza Direct. They're your personal car concierge. Just tell them the car you want, what you can pay, and they'll go find that car for you. They'll negotiate your best price. They also offer you warranties and finance, all full service. Go to autoplazadirect.com to get started with your personal car concierge, the new hassle-free way, the car buying experience you deserve. Auto Plaza Direct. Tell them Brent from Nightmare Success sent you. Folks, I want to share with you a powerful and moving new book you won't want to miss. My Name is Saffron. Voices, silenced, stifled, and taken away by author Saffron Gustafson. This isn't just a story. It's a journey through resilience, survival, and reclaiming your voice after being silenced for far too long. Saffron's story takes you inside the hidden struggles, the pain, and ultimately the triumph of refusing to be defined by circumstances. As Saffron was putting the finishing touches on her book, the prison she had just been released from, Federal Dublin FCI, was permanently closed because of sexual abuse of the women prisoners. If you've ever wondered what it takes to rise from the darkness of places, to find your truth, and to speak it boldly, this book will inspire you. Pick up your copy of My Name is Saffron today, available now on Amazon or wherever books are sold. Trust me, you'll be moved, challenged, and changed by her story. PJ, how you doing, my man? Welcome in.
All right, brother.
Welcome in.
I went easy on you on our interview, so go easy on me.
Hey, I always go easy.
Forget it. Give me the hard stuff.
I always go easy. This is your stuff. I can't ask you anything you don't know. It's all about you.
Yeah, well, you know what? It's you know, one of the things that we talked about even prior to our podcast, and we know the brothers and sisters that are in the community of having the unfortunate, and I'm going to shock some people with this word, fortunate opportunity and experience to be in federal prison, in the federal system. all of the people that have spent time in federal prison. And, it's funny because, when you say for, experts on that subject and,
Yeah.
you know, I was always taught that when, whether you're down for 10 years and down means when you're in prison, that's kind of an inside word.
Yeah. For those
How
people
long,
down in
whatever,
the Cayman Islands.
yeah, or how long your bid was, right? Like how long your time is that, we all walk the same walk, but it's a different walk.
Hmm.
So you can even micro it down to like if you were in for a year and I was in for 10 days, it's still prison. Something clicks inside your brain that changes the way you perceive everything in life, whether it's only for the time that you're inside, right? Because a lot of the things that I've learned that I learned inside that I share with you, I take to the streets because, like, for instance, stress is manufactured, right? I told you that stress is manufactured because when you're
Sure.
in zero control, like I'm an A+ personality, go getter, professional football player, free agent with the New York Jets, Giants, played in Europe, arena football, Europe, blah, 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 and highly successful in business. Had it all, lost it all, had it all, lost it all, and have it all again because of my experiences, and certainly getting sober almost 8 years ago is a huge part of that. But when you lose control over everything, like you can't even be there for your kids, you can't be there for
Mhm.
your family. And what you find out, I found out real quick, is that stress is manufactured because if you have no control in it, you're like, well, if I got nothing in the game, I can't really do anything. And so that changes the perspective of time, and really, the environment of which you're in, which is prison. So it was a wild thing. So I take those lessons that I learned in there and apply them to my everyday life. I share with you that if I'm in a business meeting or you know stressful situation, whatever the situation is. Like people say to me now, they go, when it's a 10, PJ is always at a 1 in
Yeah.
terms of stress level or the moment of what's happening, right?
Well, let me ask you something
Yeah,
about that
the mo-
because stress is something that everybody deals with.
yeah,
So, like, when you were a kid growing up, were you a guy, a kid that dealt with a lot of stress? Like, what was your life like as a kid growing up?
yeah. Great question. We grew up with my mom and dad, my two sisters, and then my little brother came along later. But great family life. Parents were divorced. We traveled around a lot. We moved town to town just as my mom was finding her way, and so we stayed together. But my father was a bartender, which was great because wherever my mom took us, my father would come and hang a shingle a town over, and so I was never without my dad and
Okay.
or my mom. Had great parents, and they really did a great job considering the situation. So, but
As a kid, though, when you say you move around a lot, when I talk to people who have moved around a lot, you're always put into new situations, so you have to figure out how to assimilate, where do I fit in? Who are the
yeah,
people I hang out with?
I think it's funny because as you just said that, I never really thought about where my self esteem issues came from, and you just nailed it. Like this is the power of therapy, right? Of talking things out. So when I went to prison and I took the RDAP program, and I learned about for the first time because I was medicated, like what I had self-esteem, self-worth, self-esteem issues. I'm like, I'm a quarterback, man. I was always excelled in everything. Hottest girlfriend, cheerleader, kick ass in the football field, made marginal grades, but I was like, there was no self-esteem issues. And then as you said that's probably, and I didn't even do this in my rehab. I didn't even say what you just said. That was probably because I was moving around, because one of the things that part of having self-esteem issues is that you don't like change.
Mhm.
And when you just said that, it's just like, holy shit, man, that's where it came from. So, man, thanks, Brett. I appreciate that.
Well, the reason I say that though,
Yeah,
PJ, is that
good
I
stuff.
was, um, I was 14 years old, and I was so, just enthralled with the fact that I was getting ready to go to this high school that I always wanted to go to. I was 6'1", in 8th grade, which was like a 7-footer. I couldn't wait to get in and do the sport thing in high school, and then boom, all of a sudden we move, and, that readjustment thing. Now, if I did that like a few times, maybe I'll get used to it, but man, as a kid, that's something that, you've gotta, you know establish yourself all over again. Because as you're a kid, you're growing up, you got your friends, you got this, you're hanging out, and then all
Yeah.
of a sudden, boom, you're going to another place, going to another
Yeah.
place.
I think though, because of my a lot of the stuff I look at in my life, and because of the leader I am in life, whether it's as a father, whether it's in businesses, because of I play quarterback, and so playing quarterback and being a starter and quarterback wherever I went, I was that
Yeah.
getting a similar, getting
Well,
a sim-
sports is a big thing to be able to jump right in, and if you're good at sports,
yeah,
all of a sudden the acceptance is there, and then, my God, thank God he showed up, and
right.
that makes that transition a little bit
Right.
easier.
I used so I'm you saying that for a reason to stair step because as I went town to town, I was plugged right into all to football and hockey. If you could punch a kick and throw it, hit it, I could do it, right? And
Yeah,
so I was always the top player picked, in all whether it's dodgeball, whatever. And then so yeah, that was a big thing. I also used that same technique though when I went to prison. As soon as
yeah,
I walked in, I went to prison at 51. I'm sorry, 46 years old, and as soon
that's
as
what I
I
was.
the low where the towers are and the
Yeah,
snipe and all that stuff got processed out, walked across the street to the camp, was met at the gate by some inmates that were already in there that I hired a prison consultant before I went in, so he had clients in there. So I was met with the shower shoes and the some
yeah,
$20 tuna fish and blah blah blah. I walked right to my bed, changed, put some grays on, put some shorts on, went right out to the basketball court. Found the white boys playing, got on their team. Next day, got on the football team. And the camp I was in Miami was FCI Miami, right behind the zoo. Two football fields, two soccer fields, racquetball courts, outdoor racquetball, two basketball courts, bocce ball.
mhm.
So there were some big things. If from a positive standpoint, there I was on every sport. So the day I went out it was a funny story. The day I went out and played football, there are guys that were in there for a while, and they were like, I said, "You mind if we're down like 3 touchdowns? You mind if I quarterback?" And the guy's like, "Who the f are you, man? This is my show, bro. This is my team." And I was like, "Okay, all right." And so like all of a sudden there was like 2 minutes left, and the guy's like, "Hey, Hesse, hey, you want to give it a shot?" And so I was like, "Yeah, sure." So this is a true story. So there was a Puerto Rican kid on the team, and he was playing defensive back. And I said I didn't speak Spanish. I said, "Hey, come here." I got him in the huddle. I said, just run down you play offense, run as fast as you can. I threw him 2 touchdowns in like 30 seconds, and we got the ball back, and we wound up losing the game by one. But that was it. That was game changing. That was like I was walking around prison on campus, so to speak. Like there he is. Who is this guy?
That's the new guy.
Yeah, and
That's the
then
quarterback guy.
right, and then the correction officers, they have access to Google, and they do some googling, and they find out that they
Well,
can play
I
ball.
wanna talk about that, though, because you just casually just drift over that. That's a pretty big deal that you played in the professional world. When you got out of high school, how did you step in? Where'd you go after that?
Well, I was out in Eastern Long Island, out in West Hampton Beach. Not a lot of big press out there. Social media wasn't what it is today. It wasn't social media at all. If you were good, hopefully they found you. So I had a Division I arm, certainly an NFL arm. That was my thing. A little bit immature in the mind, but did get recruited by University of Miami out of high school, but just didn't have the grades to do anything. And then wanted to go into a Division III school, but in two of them, one in New Jersey, one in New York, two in New Jersey, 2 years in New Jersey, 2 years in New York. So I was All American, got the local look from the Jets and the Giants because I had a bazooka arm and went to all the camps, met all the right people. And when you have a good arm like that, they want to bring you in, and whether you're a third or fourth string quarterback, which I was fourth string, in some of in the drills and stuff. But then I came out when the roster went from unlimited to 82, and so there a lot of that teams weren't carrying 5, 6 quarterbacks like they used to, right? And you become it's a meat market. So got a deal. I signed a contract over in Europe in '88. Giants brought me back in '91 after their second Super Bowl. Got a look with them. Then I ended up in the Arena Football League down in Orlando. But again, like
We had
this,
a pretty good arena football quarterback here in St. Louis for the St. Louis Rams.
yeah, you had Warner, yeah, Kurt Warner, yeah.
Uh-huh.
My quarterback in Orlando was really one of my close friends in life. His name was Ben Bennett. Ben was on the cover of Sports Illustrated when I was a senior in high school, drafted by the Bears. He went to Duke University, uh, and so he was the starting quarterback with Orlando. And at the time, there's only three quarterbacks in the Hall of Fame that I know of in the Arena Hall of Fame: Kurt Warner, Ben Bennett, and Jay Gruden, John
Yeah,
Gruden,
yeah.
Gruden's brother.
So, what was that like? I mean, because not very many people step into that world, like being suiting up and actually putting on an NFL uniform, whether you're
Well,
on the first string or the fourth string.
look, I didn't get on the field. So it was a free agent situation. But it's great at any level. And with the thing that about football were that my from the time I remember playing Pop Warner, every coach would be like, "Dude, whatever you learn in football, you're gonna take to life. Whatever you
Yeah.
learn, you're gonna take to life." And I was always like, "What's he talking about? Like, how are you gonna play football in life?" And it wasn't until my last paycheck and getting paid to
How old
play.
would you have been then?
I'm sorry.
How old would you have been then when you realized you weren't gonna be playing football?
93, so I was about 22, 21, 22, right around
Okay.
there.
Okay.
I remember feeling like my life was over. I completely failed. That's probably where the partying started increasing more as I'm sitting there getting therapy from you, Brent. Um, but the thing was, it was cool though, is that I didn't realize, I had that thing. I can always apply what I learned in football into life. Well, I didn't
Right?
understand it till one day I was in a business meeting, and all of a sudden the guy who owned the company was pitching somebody something on our deal. It was a perfect swing trainer, big white round PVC tube. And the guy I was talking to didn't buy it. And I was like, shit, man, if my guy just changes it, audibles, just changes the presentation, he could get the deal. So I called the timeout, called my guy over, said, hey, listen, what if you do this? And he's like, yeah, great idea. Went back and we closed the deal. And from then, Brent, it was like, boom, all right. Now I can do what I always do. I can come in
You know
early.
what I think is really funny about that? And you just hit on something that guys that have played sports, sales is it's a different lane, but there's a lot of the same feels. It doesn't matter how old you are. If you're good, you play. And if you do really well, you can, get all these different commissions and rise to whatever points
Right.
because everybody wants a guy that can win and close.
Correct. Yeah. So as soon as that happened, it was like the light went off, and then I was always in football,
And you
and
have a scoreboard, by the way.
yeah, the
You either
scoreboard,
win or you don't.
which you like that. I got that from our interview.
Yeah.
You're the same way, and so yeah, it was good because I was able to apply what I loved, my passion, which was football. So then I just applied that to coming in early, leaving late,
Mhm.
making sure I was prepped, like I knew the game plan, knew how to execute, knew my audibles, where I was able to get in and out of a business situation. But sure, I took my losses just like I took my wins. But one thing about playing quarterback, and you talked about this earlier, asking me the question, is that I've got a very, very short memory, right? I can
Yeah.
go out and throw three picks and come down and win I've had here, put it this way, I've had some of my best games and my worst games in the same game. Like
Yeah.
I've thrown I've thrown four touchdowns, ran for one, and thrown four interceptions with the last pick to lose the game. So
Mhm.
I've got, but I never think about that the situation that just happened. If it's a negative, I can overcome it. There's no way I'm going to let that be my defining,
I read
law.
something recently, PJ, is exactly what you're talking about. That the guy talked about that he always had stress, always had these things that were in the front of his mind. He said he analogized it to riding in a car, but the car, he let this crazy thing in his mind drive the car, change all the radio stations and scramble his mind. And he said one day he just decided, okay, I'm not getting rid of that. It's just going to sit in the back seat. I'm
Hmm.
gonna drive. I'm gonna change the radio stations. It's still there, but it doesn't get to drive anymore. It's in the back.
Yeah. Well, how about what we did when we went to prison? We had to do that. We had
Yeah.
to turn it off, put it in the back, or put something from the
Yeah.
back front, because in order to survive, like, we see all these podcasts, and I've done a lot of podcasts and I do a lot of interviews, and we don't glorify what happened, but because it's a fucking war. I don't care what anyone
Yeah.
says. It's 10 days or 10 years. It's a war. When you're told what to do, when to get up, when to pee, when to eat, when not to eat. How about that?
Yeah.
When not to do that, when to call your family. That's prison, man. There's nothing glorified about it. But the survival part of it is what you're talking about. Like,
Mhm.
you know, and this goes for anyone, because if you're never put in that situation, you don't know what you're capable of, right? What you don't know, you don't know. But when you're put in a situation where your mental survival leads to your physical survival, your spiritual survival, and then they kind of all interchange and take places throughout your incarceration, right? But when we're in there, we have a routine and we have to stick to that routine. If that routine varied 1 degree, it screwed my head up. If
Sure.
I could get to 10:30 in the morning every day with going to RDAP, getting my workout in, returning my emails. If I got to 10:30, that was a day off the calendar. The rest of the day, it was working out, playing, reading, doing whatever I was doing. But that was a day off the calendar. But if it was interrupted by a lockdown,
Yeah,
uh,
lockdowns were horrible.
yeah, lockdowns are horrible. A guy gets caught with, you
Throws
know,
everybody off.
yeah, contraband, right? Like
Yeah.
contraband, cell phone, drugs, too much food or clothes in his locker. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things that fall under the umbrella of contraband.
Well, PJ, let's talk about, because you're talking about when you've kind of realized that this was going to work for you business wise and that you could figure out how to do. How did the how did the addiction piece fall into all that equation?
Yeah, like you said, I wasn't in prison because of drugs and alcohol. I was in there for tax evasion, but geez, I was in there because of drugs and alcohol. Like I wasn't in there because I was dealing drugs and alcohol, but I was in there because of the decisions I made and didn't make on drugs and alcohol.
Right.
So the battle that I had at this point in my life, Brent, was that because I was in there because of drugs and alcohol, but I was able to get out 18 months earlier because of drugs and alcohol, right? I had
Right.
to raise my hand. I took advantage of a strategy in the federal prison, which is RDAP, Residential Drug and Alcohol Program, which knocks off 18 months of your sentence. The judge hit the gavel for 31 months. I was like, wow. But I knew if I can get to the RDAP program, which we strategized to get into, I was going to knock off 18 months. So I walked out of federal prison after a year and 4 days, and then 6 months, 3 months in a halfway house, and 3 months at my house with an ankle bracelet on. Then 3 years of probation slash paper after that. But it's you know um,
Well, you talked about how the drugs and alcohol were decisions and things that you made or you didn't make. Did you know when when this nightmare landed on you that you were going to get indicted? Did you know, have a feeling that this was going to happen, or how did that happen for you? Because
I
it
don't think.
happens in different ways for everybody.
Well, I was active in my addiction, which wasn't, I didn't accept as an addiction yet. Obviously, all those around me knew, my friends, my family, my friends. But my thing was the more screwed up I get, the more drugs and alcohol, the more successful I made, the more money I made. It was documented. I mean, the more
Yeah,
up I got,
more
the more,
confidence. Yeah,
yeah. I don't know if it was that. It was crazy. So that played into my mind. So going back to what you're saying, no, I didn't know. So I was partying and doing my thing, and I had three airplanes, the boats, the house on the water, 10,000 square feet, 26 TVs, four bars, volcano pool.
wow.
We didn't leave my house for days. I mean,
What was the business? What were you
I had
doing?
an online travel agency, and we did 3 billion in sales, and I literally had my own limousine parked out front of my house. Full time driver Valentino, he was with me for 5 years. He actually drove me in my limo I share with you to prison on my self surrender classic story. Just drove over with him and sat in the back and made phone calls. Got to the roundabout, he pulled up and let me out of the back. I powered my phone down, threw it in the back, said Valentino, I'll see you later, and that was it. Off to the off to the races. But so yeah, so. But what happened was, so my first real experience with sobriety was in prison, and then that in prison there's more alcohol and drugs and corruption going on in prison than there are on the street. So I could have partied every day, and I had money. It wasn't like most people in prison don't have any money, and you're cutting deals whether it's putting money on other people's books in the commissary. Have your full time.
Everybody's cutting deals. Yeah.
Yeah, cutting deals. So, but I had to stay sober because of RDAP. That was my ticket out of there 18 months earlier. If I got caught doing anything wrong, I lost that one. I have to serve 31 months. What am I going to tell my kids? Yeah, daddy had 2 beers with 400 guys, or
Right.
like,
And
and
lost
yeah.
18 months.
So I was like, okay, wow, okay. So I don't have a drinking problem. I'm controlling it. But the
Yeah.
risk and the reward, the consequences of law and order, right? I was just like, the consequence was so high of not getting out of prison that I was like, you know what? The risk was too high, or the consequence, right? I didn't drink. So I'm
Yeah.
thinking, man, I don't have a drinking problem. So I come out 3 months halfway house, can't drink. 3 months after that ankle bracelet at the house. The night they cut my ankle bracelet off, it was October 31st, Halloween night. They snipped it off at 4:30 in the afternoon. I picked up a six-pack of Coors Light, sat on my 2,500 square foot dock on the water, and started drinking. Went to a party that night, and then took over a wine club of all things. Took it to the third largest wine club in the world, direct sellers, and 2.5 years later, or maybe three. I'm sorry, 4.5 years later. 4.5 years later, family popped an intervention on me. Thank God they loved me enough to do that, and I got sober. Sold the
Well,
wine.
I wanna take a break there because I wanna talk about that moment. Because a lot of people who go through recovery and have interventions in that, because they have to come to it themselves.
Yeah,
I
that's
wanna
a
talk about how your mindset was getting into that, and then, how you are. We talk a lot about the rebuilding after incarceration on this show, finding a job, contributing to community, finding purpose. But I recently came across a book that reframes the entire conversation in a way many haven't considered. It's called Second Chance Economics by Nevin Shetty, and it just debuted as a #1 new release on Amazon. This isn't a book about criminal justice reform, it's a book about economic potential. Shetty starts with an overlooked reality. There are 80 million Americans with a criminal record. That's a massive underutilized talent pool, and one whose barriers to employment cost our economy a staggering 1.2 trillion a year. What I love about this book is the approach. Shetty uses data to show how second chance hiring isn't just a social good, it's a competitive advantage. It lowers turnover, fills labor gaps, and creates a virtuous cycle of growth. Whether you're a business leader, a policymaker, or someone who believes in reframing the narrative around justice impacted individuals, Second Chance Economics is a must read. Pick up your copy today on Amazon. A lot of people don't like how they show up online. Many individuals think there's no hope when it comes to managing your reputation on Google. There's hope. It's called the Discoverability Company that can help you whether you're building a reputation from scratch or you're preparing search results after a negative news story. Discoverability can also help you how you're portrayed on popular AI services like ChatGPT. To learn more, visit discoverability.co. It's not .com, it's .co. Listeners of Nightmare Success can take $100 off with coupon code Nightmare Success. And the Nightmare Success podcast is sponsored by the White Collar Support Group, the world's first support group devoted to people navigating the white collar criminal justice system. I'm a member of the White Collar Support Group, and I can tell you this is a bunch of people who help each other through the criminal justice journey for free. Whether you're just starting your journey or you've made it through to the other side, this is a great space for you. You can join us on Zoom Monday, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, 4 p.m. Pacific. For information, go to prisonist.org. That's prisonist.org. And we're back. So, PJ, you kind of covered a lot of stuff there.
yeah.
with, so I on the prison side of things, before you got out, before there was the intervention and all those different things, did you think then that there was really no issues because you stopped drinking, went to RDAP. Uh, you said that people knew around you before you went in that you might have been someone that had this addictive situation. Uh, but did you think that when you were in prison, like when you were going through the months that you were in there, the years that you were
Yeah.
in there?
Um, I was in denial as I
Okay.
look back. I have to answer that question from before I went in and while I
Okay.
was after, so because no, I didn't think I did because I was able to make the money. I justified. I was making tons of money. My kids were well taken care of.
Hmm.
Limos to school, stuff like that. But the limos to school was bullshit. That was me because I couldn't drive the next day, right? Or
Yeah.
because get behind the wheel. I was very adamant about not ever drunk driving.
Hmm.
So I would just make these judge and lapses in judgment. I'd be at every game, every practice. Matter of fact, I was the only father at the games.
So you
So
were a very functioning guy as far
100%.
as
But
yeah.
I'm on the cell phone. I'm not present. I'm not, but I was there. So as much as I would, I had some big screw ups with my family. I also was a big provider and never got fired, never got arrested. Was
How
never,
many kids did you have in this whole scenario?
yeah, I have Olivia and Dylan.
Okay.
And so, but again, with Dylan, I was at every football game. I was very, very there. And when it comes to that,
How
but,
did they
but
handle? Because I
well, let me,
meant to cover the
let me just
how did they handle your situation going into prison? Because what age would they have been?
Uh, so Dylan was probably 18, 19. Olivia was 14.
Yeah, so they were kind of my kids' ages when they went in, so
Yeah,
they knew what was going on.
yeah, but
How did they come and visit? How did that all work for
well,
you?
no, so there, yeah, I was kind of strict on the rules about what I wanted because my incarceration I planned out. I planned
Okay.
every aspect of it out. As I share with you, I made sure we were redesignated from Pensacola to FCI Miami because it had an RDAP program.
Mhm.
I delayed with a massive toothache that I needed surgery on to go to my self surrender date, and I was able to postpone the surrender date 30 days to get into the RDAP. There were a lot of things I did, and I was also very particular about visitation and things like that. Even though it's better for the but I was like, it got loosened as I got in there, but I didn't want people to see me in there. I didn't want people and my kids to see it, but they need to heal. They need to be there. And I want to just say one thing before I get into this about what I was saying about. Although I was at the games and I was providing financially and I was all that stuff, that's the biggest mistake people make that I made. I thought that was enough. It's not. The kids need us emotionally. They need us like to be
Right.
listening,
Right.
and your wife and stuff like that. So I take full responsibility for that lack of presence of that part, 100%. So when I broke it to Dylan's my boy, so and we share some similar traits. Let's just put it that way. So um I knew it was going to be good. I knew I was going to be okay. I was like, because I was still under investigation, and I knew I was going to be going away. And then I sat her down at the couch and I said, "Hey, honey, I got Daddy needs to talk to you." And she's like, "What?" And I said, "Daddy made some big mistakes, and he's got to go away." And she's like, "What do you mean go away?" I said, and I try not to say the word prison, but she's like, "Where do you mean go away?" I said, "Well, I have to go away to prison." And her eyes swelled up, big beautiful blue eyes. This big tear came down, and she started crying. She looked at me and she goes, "What about my volleyball?"
Yeah.
Because she's
That's her world. Yeah.
yeah, that's her volleyball. She's an AAU, travel
Yeah.
team. Every weekend we go to a different city, and I knew it, and so that was tough. But once I own that, a big part of what I teach people is that own your shit. Like as soon as I owned it with her and them and the family, then the load gets lightened, right? And from your wife and your kids,
Mhm.
it's that we go through phases of it, right? You go through
Right.
phases of dealing with it, from blowing your head off, which I certainly did. A couple nights on the dock, I was like, forget this, because when you don't know, when you're not sentenced, that's like the worst part. The
The
speculation
unknown.
of the unknown, especially with guys like you and I that are athletic, A+ personalities that have been in control of our lives, and so well, yeah, a lot of things. So I get out, so I'm in there, and like I said, I don't think I have a drinking problem. Then I get out and I'm on the loose again, and I'm making more money. I'm making more money than I was before I went in. The wine club, third largest wine club in the world,
Let's talk about that because this goes into 1,500 prisons on the Adobo platform.
yeah,
How did you do that? Because you got out of prison. Reentry is not easy. Everybody knows that.
right.
How did you do that? Because that sounds like a big thing to
What?
create.
Yeah. So one of the things that there's some fellow inmates in there, drug dealers,
Mhm.
brilliant, brilliant guys, right? So you sit in these meetings and you hear them like, "Oh, how the hell am I going to work at McDonald's and live off an hourly salary and blah 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 blah?" blah. And so went to one guy and I was like, "Hey man, you're in here for what?" She's like, I was moving a lot of weight. I said, "All right, cool. All right. So you a smart guy?" "No, I'm just a drug dealer." I said, "Well, all right, let's talk about this. Let's go in this classroom." So get on the whiteboard and I said, "All right, how much weight were you using?" He's like, "All right, X amount of pounds." I said, "So for you to take a kilo and turn it into pound and ounces and down to 8 balls and the OZs, and you know how to charge, right?" He's like,
Uh-huh.
"Yeah." The numbers like this. Then I said distribution. Let's talk about the distribution. He would say, "Yeah, I had this guy that." So you were in logistics, right? Because you know how to
Mhm.
break down the whole. These guys are brilliant,
Probably had commissions.
right? And then I said, "I go, what's your burn rate?" Here's the thing. I go, "What's your burn rate?"
Mhm.
It's like, "What do you mean? What do you mean burn rate? What's burn rate?" I said, "Burn rate. Like, what does it cost you a month to live before you get out of bed in the morning? Before your first foot hits the floor, what does it cost you to get out of bed?" I knew my burn rate at one time was like 60,000 a month. It was ridiculous.
Mhm.
And he's like $40,000 a month. So I said, "All right, let's get rid of the baby mama. Let's get rid of the baby mama. Let's get rid of the entourage, all the." Now you're looking at your burn rate's like $3,200 a month, and that's a lot, right? And so then it triggered. I had to take him back that he can live off of a regular legal pay,
Mhm.
salary until he can figure something out. So again, besides these hiccups, the tax evasion, I'm a pretty smart guy. So I knew that when I was in prison, I went in there I wrote a book. I started 2 companies. I went in there, I went in at 26% body fat, came out at 9. Um, and
Which
I
it
wrote,
looks like you've maintained that, PJ.
yeah, because I learned a lot about nutrition.
Yeah.
So make sure you ask me that. So I went in there with a plan in there, and I learned about, I wrote the book. I wrote the book for on purpose because if you and I were in a business
Did you
relationship,
write the book while you were in prison?
I had started it before that, but I finished it in there because
Okay.
I wasn't coming out of prison. I was going to have people hold this over my head.
Yeah.
It's one
Own
thing,
your
but
story.
holding it over my partner's heads or saying like, listen, we want to do the deal, but we can't do it because PJ's got a felony.
Yeah.
My book is right here. And they say, well, you didn't talk about it. I said, well, you didn't ask me about it. It sells on Amazon. And
Mhm.
so, and that diffuses like everything.
Yeah.
And so, but in RDAP, getting to the intervention question, RDAP every day you watch the videos on drugs, alcohol, and interventions. And so, literally every day, I would get pounded every day for 9 months straight on drugs, alcohol videos, interventions, and domestic violence and everything. And the day I come out, well, first of all, I came out and got involved with the wine club, and we
Had
took
you
it.
been involved in wine before this ever
Never,
happened?
no, never. That
So
was that.
what was the genesis of the idea?
2 weeks before I went inside, a guy I knew came up to me and said, "Hey, I got this great idea. I want to start a wine club. It's called Direct Sellers. I want to network market it, multi-level market it, and that's what I've been doing for 30 plus years." And I said, "That's a great idea, no pun intended, but I'm not winding things up. I'm winding things down. I'll see you. Like, peace
Mhm.
out." And I said, "I'm going away for hopefully a year in prison. Good luck." I go away. I come out. Remember, I did a year, 4 days, 6 months on halfway house, 6 months at halfway house, and then 6 months later, after that, I'm flying back to New York for my class reunion,
Mhm.
and my friend David Chase is picking me up. The guy who owned the wine club, his name is David. I hit the wrong David. It calls him. I see it call him. I hang up. He calls me right back. He's like, "Hey man, what's up?" I was like, "Hey, what's up?" He's like, "I can't believe you just called. I was praying to God last night that somebody would call with your type of skills and da 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 da." And I was trying to blow him off the phone, and he said to me, he goes, no, I said, "So how's the wine club going?" And he goes, it didn't really go too well. We only have like 150 members after 2 years, and we didn't have you." And I said, "Well, that's very nice of you." And he goes, "Yeah." And he goes, "You know what's really weird, PJ?" I go, "What?" He goes, "Of the 150 members we have in 2 years, 149 are still paying their monthly auto ship." I go, "You have a 99% retention rate?"
Wow.
Yeah, like all nonchalant. I go, "Where are you right now?" He goes, I'm here in town." I go, "Hey, meet me in my office tomorrow. Bring all your agreements, bring your QuickBooks, bring everything you have." I vetted it out. Loved the name Direct Sellers with a C,
Uh-huh.
uh, and direct sales. That's what we did. And so I said, let me take over the top spot. I'll redo everything. Do you have money to do this?" He's like, "Yeah, yeah." And so what happened was there was a cash call like 2 weeks later to move forward. They didn't have the money. So me and my partners, we said, we'll fund it. And we wound up taking a huge equity position and took it off the streets for 4 months. I redid everything, all the contracts, the whole marketing, branding, changed the comp plan, the commission structure. And in 18 months, we took it to $78 million in top line revenue. Opened up Australia, United Kingdom, and Germany. Third, I was doing deals with Richard Branson. He was my backbone for with Virgin Wines over there.
Yeah.
We were the third largest, and the day before I was going to be the keynote speaker, we had sold out events in Vegas, sold out events in Manhattan, or we had our top 2,000, 3,000 reps would come in. We'd have the biggest party, and then I was the day the ne- I was supposed to be the keynote speaker in front of 5,000 people in New Orleans
Mhm.
on a Friday. And I was leaving my garage on a Thursday, and all of a sudden I see a bunch of people walking towards my house in my development, and I didn't recognize anyone because I was coming off a 5 week, I'm sorry, a 5 day bender, and I would always get sober 2 days before I did an event, so I didn't screw anything up, like so I was always on top of my game.
Mhm.
And so all of a sudden I see, and I don't recognize anyone, but I see like this little real estate guy. I'm like, damn, there's nothing for sale in my neighborhood. And then I make out my sister Jen's for a face, and I go, and I just all of a sudden I go, I'm done. Like I knew because of the videos. Like I knew it was over. I knew my drinking days were over. Now I have a decision to make based
Right.
on the patient that's coming through the door because they're going to hit me with everything they have. They're going to read their letters, and it's the good and the bad letter. That intervention letter will rip your heart out. It's tells you how great you are and how much they love you and appreciate you, and then they go at it and they unload the things that you've done, said, trying to get emotional because these are people that you love
Mhm.
that came in from all over the country. I had 15 in my living room, friends and family, that my sisters and my cousin Melissa handpicked the team that they wanted because, you come at me, I'm 9 out of 10 times I'm coming at you and I'm going to fucking roll you over. And everyone knew that. So they were very particular, like who was there. And they caught me on a down day. I was beat up. I was so sick of being everything everyone wanted to talk about was my drinking. And so the noise had got so loud. They did their pitch, their presentation about how much they love me, but if I continued to do this, they couldn't be a part of my life. I couldn't be a part of their life. Like, they couldn't be my mom. They couldn't be my dad. They couldn't be my daughter.
Mm.
And at that point in time, man, when you have a choice, and the choice is to tell everyone, hey, you can go f yourself,
Mhm.
or you can say, yeah, I accept your gift. And your gift is the car sitting outside your house, waiting to go to a pre-planned rehab. And the guy came up to me, the interventionist, and he said to me, I said, I need to take a break. And I was on my lanai looking out of the water. And he goes, you thinking about running? I said, nah, man, I can't disappoint them any more than I'm disappointing them. I said, no, nah. So I'm flattered that and humbled and blessed that they love me this much to do this. So I went inside and they said, what's it going to, no, I actually said to him, I go, can I just go, let me just go to my event. Let me just speak and I'll come and go to rehab on Monday. And I knew the answer because I lost all the 9 out of 10 times that a person refuses or says, I'll go the
Later.
following day. They're either dead because they've overdosed because they know they're going to go,
Mhm.
or they just never make it there and they die anyway. So I was like, yeah, I said, let me go. He's like, the chances are. I said, yeah, you're right. Went back in, took my lumps, called my team at the wine club. I said, hey, I'm working on me. And what's funny about alcoholism and addiction is that when you're actively out there partying, drinking, everyone's screaming at you the whole time. You're so selfish. You're so selfish. You don't care about anything except yourself, yourself, yourself.
Mhm.
And the second you raise your hand, Brent, to get help, everyone goes like this. Listen, man, you got to take care of yourself. You got to be selfish. You got to work on yourself because you're so focused on your addiction just completely clouds your mind and makes you into a person that you're not, that it looks like you're being selfish, but the disease, that addiction's eating you. And then when you have a chance to address it and take time out, um, and I went right back into my prison mode. I went into that mentality, get into a routine, get into the rehab. I was out I checked in Thursday afternoon at 4 o'clock. At 5:30 Friday morning, I was outside. I didn't have a gym, which they lied about. I was on the website. They had a gym and they had horses and a pool. I got there. I go, where's the gym? They go, we closed it down. I said, where are the horses? They go, we had to bury it in the pool. And I'm like, where's the beach? It's 20 miles away. I'm like, this is bullshit. But I locked down, started working out every day. And I got serious about it. I got serious just like I did about going to prison and being in prison. I got
So
serious about
do you think PG, with everybody saying what they said, were you already there? Did you already feel that this was a reset for you, or or did you feel like at that moment you were doing it for them?
um man, you're asking good questions because these emotions are flaring up. Like I knew, like when I got indicted, and then I was in denial. I didn't do it. I didn't do it. I didn't do it. And when I accepted that I did fuck up on whatever level I did, I put myself in that position. I made the mistake. I'm the one going to federal prison. And when you do that, the pressure just goes off, right? Yeah. So when I knew, I don't think I knew until I got to rehab and I introduced myself to the people that were there, right? And I said, "Hey,
Okay.
Brent, hey, it's PJ." And I'm a question asker because I want to know how the fuck I'm getting out of here, right?
Mhm.
Hey, Brent, hey, how do you feel about this being your first time? Because it's my first time.
Mhm.
You're like, nah, man, this is my fifth time. I go down the list 6 times, 7 times, 20 times, 8 times, 30 times. I'm like, whoa. I said, hey, man, to myself, I'll never forget it. I was like, hey, God, I'm not going to be coming back here. Just like I'm not going back to prison. I'm one and done. I sat in the front row, got right below the 12 steps,
Yeah.
read the first step. If you admit that you're powerless over alcohol and that your life's unmanageable, and I read that and I was like, that's read in the past tense. Because if I don't drink, I'm in power and my life is manageable. I have all the
Right.
power.
Right.
I am a student, and by the grace of God, and I'm at 7.5 years. I don't do one day at a time. I do a year at a clip because that's just the way I'm wired. And
Mhm.
I'm getting close to my 8th year in September, and
That's
then
incredible. I mean,
my
it's
yeah, it's
that's
crazy.
a I was watching a podcast of yours that you had your best friend's son on,
Yes,
and which I think probably had to be really kind of crazy surreal for you to be in that situation and you guys being able to talk about the way but you guys talked about something that I thought was interesting that he said, "I don't do it that way," and you said, "Hey, I don't care. You do it however way you wanna do it. It doesn't make any difference to me." What do you think people get wrong about recovery? Because is there
great question.
what do you think?
Well, first of all, it's a great question, and his father, if you watch the video, was also on my intervention team, which made that interview even more incredible.
Yeah,
Because I was able to pay it forward, right, and
yeah,
talk about a odd moment. Um, the problem with anybody that has an addiction is that the first thing you're telling them is that they can't do what they want to do, which is drink or use, right?
right.
And you try to take away that mistress, that
Mhm.
love affair that is going on that we have with drugs and alcohol, and everyone that's addiction as an addict knows that. But then you come into a situation where if it's AA, right, and AA gets a lot of shit, but it's the first one that was kind of out there, and
Yeah,
the first movement. Now there's different variations of there's smart and there's Dharma and there's EMDR and now there's ayahuasca. There's a bunch, so my personal opinion is that you need a baseline. You need a baseline in everything, whether it's baseline in religion, baseline in business, baseline in your fitness, baseline in whatever. And so once you establish a baseline, at the end of the day, no matter what you do, as long as you don't drink that day, then hey man, congratulations. And I'll even tell you this, but a lot of people don't know this. People that are in AA, people that are in NA, Narcotics Anonymous,
mhm.
they do not want you going to each other's meetings. The
Mm.
NA people think they're better than the AA people, and the AA people think they're not as fucked up as the NA people, right? And they do not want cross marketing. They don't want you going to meetings. And a lot of the old school that are in there that have been sober for a while, they make it known. Well, when I was in my rehab, this guy, a counselor, he goes, hey man, he goes, listen, if you ever encounter that situation where you walk into an SA meeting, Sex Anonymous meeting,
Mhm.
NA meeting, AA meeting, whatever, GA, Gambling Anonymous, and someone gives you shit, all you do is say, hey man, I'm just trying to save my life.
Mm.
And so whatever works for you, and again, what works today is not, might work tomorrow. But the
Yeah,
beauty about being sober and overcoming addiction is that the only thing that can help you 1000% is the person in the mirror. That's it. If you're not ready to make the change, you're not ready to go all in, then guess what? You're going to be a menace to yourself, a menace to your family, a menace to society. And so that's also giving me a chance to micromanage that stuff. Like if people come to me and they want help and they go, hey, I think I'm ready. I go, you're not ready.
yeah,
Because going back to what you said,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know in your soul when you want to give it up because it's taking everything from you. So another great question.
And you're in incredible shape. When you were going through all this and with the wine club and everything, were you
Well,
still in great shape? Because I mean, I'm wondering if that also is a way that you can, you know,
yeah,
your mindset stream right through to,
well, yeah,
being at the age you are. I think you and I are pretty close to the same age, but
yeah,
you're in incredible shape.
yes, thank you. And the answer is, because I was a high performing athlete, I always stayed in as shape, but not. I'm in better shape now, but physically,
Than
like
ever.
how I looked than ever in my entire life. I mean,
Yeah.
I'll be 9 next month,
I know you play
but
pickleball like a madman too.
pickleball like a madman. But I eat once a day. I don't drink. Obviously, that's a big thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, being in shape is a big part of my recovery because that's, if and I want everyone that's part of the one of the pots of the pots at the end of the rainbow.
Yeah.
When you're sober and you got all that BS behind you, there's your capacity for things from smelling, touching, feeling to working out to do it. It just frees you up. You can do so many great things, and it's just an amazing, amazing world. And
What do you do to, because get into so many different discussions about, people, especially when we're in prison with, like, going to social events, everything's always geared towards drinking.
yeah,
Everything is. You go to
yeah.
a wedding, you go to somebody's next door party for Labor Day, you go down to the lake. How does how do you calibrate that to redirect it to where I don't need that? And if anybody asks
Oh,
me about it,
it's an easy one. Yeah, so it's an easy one. I just wait like 30 minutes. If you have an urge to drink, wait like 30, 35 minutes and watch everyone start to unfold. Watch the same story being told. Watch
loudly,
the same yeah, the same thing. Like, my family's they love they're big, the no judgment. My family's a big drinking family. It always has been. We're all, Irish and German,
yeah,
and so when I go to the events, I'm first one to dip out. No, and this they everyone thinks that I'm dipping out because I have to, like that. I'm like I want to drink. It's completely opposite. I just don't want to be around it.
yeah,
You know what I mean? And
yeah,
and so and that goes for if I go to a football game, if I go to a bar. I mean,
yeah,
I can say I love going to a bar, sitting down, having like three, two or three Heineken double zeros, non-alcoholic beer, and then I know I'm walking out. I can drive. I can do whatever I want.
yeah.
I get a kick out of that, like
Mhm.
especially during the day if I knock down two at lunch or something, and I just feel like amazing. I'm not buzzed up,
There's
and
a
I know
lot of rewards for that, yeah,
yeah, it's cool, man,
yeah,
and drinking's down 39% in Vegas, alcohol sales are down 39%.
yeah,
Being sober is cool, being a Christian is cool, being it's just
yeah.
it's all together.
Well, let's talk about how did you come up with, LFG Life Podcast?
Well, I'm a huge Tom Brady fan who's, obviously the GOAT,
He's
the
the
best
GOAT.
of all. Yeah, and so his thing was he has LFG, which is let's fucking go. And so I started a brand called LFG 24/7 365, which is let's and again being I'll be 59 in May. I'm sober 8 years, so in my mind I'm 7.5 years old. And I'll be 8 years old in my sober date. And I say
Mhm.
that because I attack life. Like I attack my Christianity, my faith, my relationships with my kids, with my family, my business partners. I attack it all because I have so much to give and so much to for me in my mind, so much time to make up. And when I turned 50, I remember looking online. I'm like, man, there's not no one's talking about like what it's like to be 50 and be like in shape and be like,
Yeah,
I'm like kicking ass. I'm still, when you get all your earning years, your prime earning years are from 35 to whatever, 25 to 40. Fuck, I've made more money in the last 10 years than, most people make in a lifetime.
mhm,
And I say that because it's not over. Like,
right,
Gary Breck, a great friend of mine, he says, "Hey, anyone that's alive between now, like today and 2030, has the opportunity to live to be 120, 140." Well, if I'm going to be living to be 70, 75, 80, I'm going to be in the best shape of my life. And in order to do that, I have to do that now. I have to put the foundation in place. I've got to be eating the right things.
yeah.
So the LFG life is it's let's fucking go. And so we started the podcast obviously for recovery and addiction, then it morphed into people in prison. Then it morphed into high level successful people. And now it's about like just interviewing people like yourself, like me, that are living their life with a purpose. And we
And really,
know,
don't you think that's maybe the secret ingredient?
I think, listen, man in general, and I'll speak for on behalf of you and I as men and mankind, we need hope. And hope is purpose. If you have purpose, you have hope. If you have hope, you have a purpose. And
Mhm,
so that's the driving factor. Yeah, I know that's a great point to make for young men
mhm,
and guys our age, right? That
yeah,
that you have purpose and you're doing something that means something, especially if you do something that means something with the guy upstairs, and then you should attack it and attack your wife, a lover. Tell her you love her. Attack if a girl, like, tell your husband that he's cool, and then you know I love this new thing I just hear: the 6-second kiss and the 30-second hug.
alright,
Like,
I
with your
like that.
6-second kiss,
Uh-huh,
30-second hug. But you gotta watch out for that 30-second hug, man. Someone's gonna be like, "Well, you're weird." Like a long time.
Well, I always ask everybody this question. I'm curious what yours is, PJ. What do you think is your biggest takeaway from all this that you've experienced and lived through?
Which part? The prison, the rehab,
Just
or
the whole thing. What would you take away from like
well, you got to go back to like growing up to the Rocky movies, right? And
mhm.
then the major these are movies and lines in the movie that just impacted my life, and then there's obviously the one where Apollo Creed says to Rocky, "There is no tomorrow. There is no tomorrow. You got to fight." Right? And thinking Rocky's 27, it's Stallone has a great one when he's saying about it. So many times you get up.
Yeah, when he's
Uh,
talking to his kid.
yeah, he saw a very, very powerful. I have chills as
One
you
of the
said.
most powerful
Yeah, yeah. It's and so
monologues.
I want people, and more importantly, I want my kids and my friends and my family that like to say that, hey, Peter PJ Jensen, he's just a badass, and he did it the right way. He did it under God. He did it with passion, and he was there for all of us when we needed him. And I love my saying that I learned from uh, one of my great mentors, Coach Tomer. He said, "Hey, if I'm standing, you're standing. If I'm standing, you're standing." And that's what I live by. Everyone knows my guys and my family know I'm ride or die. If they need me, I'm there. Doesn't make a difference. That movie from another one from The Town with Ben Affleck, right?
Yeah.
You guys say, "Brent, listen, I can't tell you where we're going, but we're gonna probably have to hurt some people." And you say, "Whose car are we taking?" That's when you got to ride or die. That's who I am for the people.
That's a good PJ takeaway. I like it. I like it. If people want to get a hold of you, PJ, I know you got the LFG
Yeah, LFG.
podcast.
Yep, the LFG Life on YouTube. You can Facebook me, Peter Jensen. I'm pretty easy to find. Again, my chapter that I'm in right now. It's not my last chapter for sure. It's my next chapter, and that's the one about getting and showing people that there is a significant difference in your life for being sober. We have pathways to get you sober if anyone needs help in recovery or addiction. And then on the family side too. I know we talked about this, that there's a side too, that the families of addicts, they need a pathway too. And then also the families of people that got incarcerated. They
Absolutely.
have,
Yeah.
or we cover it all, Brent, and you and I met through a mutual friend of ours, Steve Dean. Got to give
Yeah, we
Stevie a
got to give Steve Dean a shout out.
big shout out. He's like one of my dogs. He's a great guy. And that's just amazing how I saw my daughter today. So yeah, I'm on a podcast today with a friend of that I met through Steve Dean. She's like, really? She's like, oh, Steve. She loves Uncle Steve. So yeah,
He would probably be a pretty interesting interview with Steve Dean.
oh, he's the best, dude.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
Yeah, he's great. He's a great athlete too, which I love. Great competitor.
And he loves the pickleball. Yep.
We played 2 days ago. Oh yeah, he hurt his bicep, so he's on injured reserve right now. But
That's
he's
what
he's
happens to the old people.
yeah, he's in great shape. He's in
He is
really
in good shape. Yeah.
good guy.
I want to give a shout out to Homestead Financial too. Lets me use this podcast room with all the lights and cameras. Um, if you're looking for a book out there, I've got one: Nightmare Success, Loyalty, Betrayal, Life Behind Bars, Adapting, Finally Breaking Free. Hey, if you got time, I know it's a hassle, but if you could leave a review on Apple, those really help the show, and I love reading them. If you want to know what I'm doing, it's BrentCassity.com. I spell it wrong with a T-Y, not a D-Y. As I used to say to my people when I was writing my emails back and forth from 11, where stay strong, I'll do the same. PJ Jensen, man, you are attacking life, man. I love it. Love it.
Well, thanks, man. I
I'm
appreciate
pumped.
that.
I want to go out and do something.
Well, you're already doing it, man. Yeah, you have me on the show, and keep hope alive, man.
I appreciate it, man. Nightmare Success in and out.